The Greenland crisis escalates, Trump threatens war, and Europe strikes back with an iron fist. Dear listeners, welcome to a shocking, breathtaking broadcast that will take your breath away. Imagine this. It is January 14th, 2026, a day that sets the world in turmoil, where the glowing hatred between the power-hungry Donald Trump and the united forces of Europe escalates to an explosive climax. I can neither imagine, nor do I want to speculate that a NATO country would attack. Yet, that is exactly what threatens now, like a thunderclap out of the blue. When you look at a map of the world, Greenland appears like a sleeping giant, a white ice-covered behemoth, resting in deceptive silence. But beneath this silence, the footsteps of one of the world's greatest military crises now echo a conflict that shakes the foundations of NATO and could turn old alliances into bloody enmities. If we don't take Greenland, Russia or China will take Greenland, and I will not allow that. Roars Trump, this insatiable man of power who is ready to walk over corpses to realize his imperial dreams. In January 2026, we wake up to one of the greatest geopolitical risks of modern times, a tectonic earthquake that could tear the world order apart. I want to make it clear, should the United States dare to militarily attack another NATO country, then everything ends. The NATO alliance stands on the edge of the abyss. Not due to Russian tanks or Chinese missiles, but through the betrayal of its own members, an act of pure hatred streaming from the White House. Donald Trump's threat to take Greenland by beauty or by force. One day we will have Greenland has triggered an unprecedented state of alarm in Europe, a storm of indignation that divides the continents. It rages in the headlines. Several European nations are resisting President Trump's threats of a US encroachment on Greenland. The leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, the United Kingdom, and Spain, together with the Danish government, publish a statement that echoes like a battle cry: "We will not allow an ally to treat us like a colony." For the first time in history, Germany, France, and the Scandinavian countries are sending military supplies to Greenland as a direct response to Washington's potential aggression. The Pentagon is stunned. Brussels is on high alert. Rare earths. The GUK gap, the European-Chinese alliance, and the paradox of NATO's Article 5, everything is on the table, and for Trump, it is not going well. From Russia to China, from America to Europe, a new world order is being forged on the Arctic ice. A game with fire worth billions in resources and potentially costing thousands of lives. It all began with a single sentence from the Oval Office in Washington. Donald Trump, pushing aside all diplomatic pleasantries, reveals his intentions, or rather his threat, for Greenland. "We're going to do something with Greenland, either the nice way or the more difficult way." Trump's declaration, "I'd like to do a deal the easy way, but if we can't, we'll have to do it the hard way," is the moment when diplomacy is suspended and the risk of total chaos is placed on the table. While the world waits tensely for Denmark's reaction, unprecedented military activity begins along the nerve line from Copenhagen to Berlin, from Paris to Stockholm. Europe activates its defense reflexes against a perceived threat from Washington, an act of resistance that ignites hatred of American imperialism. Under the ice, deep in the icy waters of the North Atlantic, German reconnaissance teams, French naval units, and Scandinavian special forces are positioning themselves not to stop the Russians, but to block a possible American intervention to build a wall of ice against the enemy from the west. On the morning of January 14th, 2026, the Pentagon is shocked. Europe no longer blindly follows every command. Germany decides to send military troops to Greenland, one of the most radical and assertive military steps since the Second World War. The operation is named Icy Resolve, Iron Determination. Berlin is not alone. The Swedish Prime Minister officially announces that Swedish armed forces personnel are being sent to Greenland at the Danish request. Sweden, whose NATO membership is still fresh, cements its presence in the north by sending not only officers, but also moving CV-90 infantry fighting vehicles, masters of winter conditions, with a speed of up to 70 kilometers per hour and armament of 40mm cannons, as well as Archer artillery systems, which can deploy in minutes and deliver precise shots at 50 kilometers onto the Greenlandic ice fields. The German army, the Bundeswehr, goes far beyond a mere reconnaissance mission. They are establishing the infrastructure for a permanent Arctic Sentinel mission with Eurodrones that can stay in the air for over 18 hours, master a range of 500 kilometers, and are equipped with high-resolution sensors that detect every movement in the ice, a direct blow against Trump's ambitions. Shortly thereafter, the Netherlands and Canada join in sending their own units. The disagreements within the alliance turn into a physical split, a rift that deepens the hatred toward the USA. This is no symbolic flag race, but a real military deployment. France's support is not long in coming. Emmanuel Macron warns that a threat to the sovereignty of a European country would trigger a chain reaction, and announces that France is joining Germany and supporting the defense of Greenland. The deployment of French nuclear-capable Rafale jets with a combat radius of 1,850 kilometers to the region raises Europe's deterrence into the stratosphere jets that fly at Mach 1.8 and are armed with Mica missiles that can hit targets at 80 kilometers. What really changes the game is the entry of Great Britain, while London drums with plans to send Royal Navy ships and fighter planes to the region against the Russian and Chinese threat. Canada's CP-140. Aurora patrol aircraft with a range of 9,000 kilometers keep the skies clear. Aircraft equipped with sonar buoys that can locate submarines at hundreds of kilometers. Here we must analyze the situation on the ground. The deployed troops are not symbolic peacekeepers, but real combat units. The British, French, and German plan to send troops to Greenland under the name of a NATO mission is in reality a deterrence. A clear message: we are here. The stance of Danish Prime Minister Frederiksen and the Greenlandic administration is unmistakable. Greenlandic Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen sets his diplomatic course, and if we have to choose here and now between the USA and Denmark, we choose Denmark. We choose the Kingdom of Denmark. We choose the EU. Well, it is a historic turning point that the German army casts off its famous policy of restraint and moves special forces who can operate at -40 degrees into a region where tensions with the closest ally, the USA, are running at full speed. Berlin knows if Greenland is ignored today, other deals in the Baltics or Eastern Europe could follow tomorrow. Europe is experiencing the birth pangs of transformation from a US-dependent structure to an autonomous power that protects its interests itself, a process that fuels hatred of Trump's America First policy, which treats Europe like a vassal. If military power is not enough, Europe has another option that could paralyze Washington, the bazooka of technology, and trade the real blow that Trump did not foresee. In the face of the US withdrawal of the protective shield, Europe could turn eastward toward China, Washington's greatest enemy, a betrayal that would bring the USA to its knees. The seeds sown during Macron's visit to China at the end of 2025 are now growing into a Eurasian economic pact that puts Washington in a panic. Rumors of secret agreements where Europe imports Chinese technology and squeezes out US companies are making the rounds. Today, behind closed doors, the European Union sends a clear message to the USA. If you threaten us militarily, we will close our market to American companies and open it to China. This is no bluff. Brussels is preparing to freeze all trade agreements with the USA and implement legal regulations like the Digital Markets Act in war mode, which would sweep US tech giants like Apple, Tesla, and Google from the European market, an economic blow costing billions and causing Trump's America First to collapse.
What do you
America first. America first. Yet Europe's discussions about lowering customs barriers with China and building a direct strategic partnership with Beijing in the trade of rare earths are a nightmare for the US. Imagine. Trump wants Greenland to stop China, yet his movement serves Europe to China on a silver platter. A kill box, an inescapable trap that makes strategic minds in Washington break into a sweat. The true earthquake caused by this military deployment plays out on a legal and philosophical level. Everyone knows NATO's famous Article 5. An attack on one is an attack on all. But what if the parties in a conflict are themselves alliance members? That is the deadly paradox that could paralyze NATO's operations and bring the alliance to collapse, a system failure that ignites hatred within NATO. It is estimated that deep concern and confusion prevail at NATO headquarters in Brussels. Telephone traffic in the Secretary General's office is intense. Rumors of emergency meetings are making the rounds. Trump has clearly said, "I saved NATO. Without me, there would be no NATO today." And yet he sees the future of the alliance as a bargaining chip ready to sacrifice it. The scenarios in European capitals are serious. Retired French General Michel Yakovlev warns, "If NATO ends, we throw them out of Ramstein, out of Naples, you won't have a single ship left in the Mediterranean. We'll throw them out." Such statements prove how tense the situation is. This legal uncertainty could have dangerous effects on the ground. Whom do soldiers obey in the chain of command? Even in the US Congress, there are dissenting voices. Statements emphasize that soldiers using military force against Greenland without congressional approval are following illegal orders and attempt to activate internal checks and balances. participating in the use of military force against Greenland without congressional authorization. They are following illegal orders. That's just a fact. 扎起. What is happening in the Arctic right now is not a Cold War, but a test of trust among allies, and the most disturbing thing is that both sides are nearing a point where a withdrawal could be seen as weakness. Why does Trump want this ice-covered island so desperately? The answer lies not only on the map, but in the trillion-dollar secret beneath the glaciers, a treasure that could ignite wars. Under the ice, it's about resources. Greenland is not only strategically located, but is a gigantic reservoir of the most valuable elements of the periodic table, rare earths. These magical metals keep modern life and the war machine running, from smartphones to F-35 jet ships, from EV batteries to wind turbines. China dominates 90% of the market. Beijing can strangle Western industry by restricting supplies. The Kvanefjeld mine in southern Greenland is one of the most critical points to break this monopoly. Trillions of dollars in uranium, neodymium, and other minerals are gushing from under melting glaciers. Trump's insistence on control could be aimed at blocking China's access and securing raw materials for US tech giants. Trump makes no secret of it. If we don't buy Greenland, Russia or China will take Greenland, and I'm not gonna let that happen. Europe sees these resources as fuel for its green transition and digital independence. A contest over who leads the industrial revolution of the 21st century. Should the USA control it? European industry could become more dependent on Washington. If Europe holds fast, it retains autonomy, while soldiers watch on the ice stock exchanges and industrial giants watch this chess game breathlessly. It is not hard to guess who gains the greatest strategic advantage from this chaos. The Kremlin and Beijing follow the tensions in the West with schadenfreude. For Vladimir Putin, this is an unexpected geopolitical opportunity. The USA has serious plans for Greenland, plans with deep historical roots. With such statements, Russia emphasizes US goals, stokes fear in the European public, and gambles on widening the rift in the alliance, a masterstroke of hatred. The most critical passage for Russia's Northern Fleet and nuclear submarines is the narrow corridor between Greenland, Iceland, and the UK, the GI-UK gap. Now, there is a trust problem among the allies who are supposed to control it. A potential weakness in NATO's submarine hunting coordination, giving Russian subs more maneuver room in the Atlantic. China pursues a pragmatic wait-and-see policy. Beijing sees the rift between Europe and the USA as maneuvering space for its own economic projects. If Europe experiences trade friction with the USA, its interest in Asian markets could increase. While the West loses its image of unshakable unity, the East uses these rifts to increase global influence. Trump, wanting to maximize America's interests, unintentionally gives his rivals a geopolitical gift. A divided West wasting energy in internal battles. In summary, the Greenland crisis goes beyond a mere land dispute. It is the most serious stress test of the security architecture since 1945. The US decision to make relations with allies transactional confronts Europe with the reality of defending itself. The glaciers are melting, yes, but not just ice. Diplomatic conventions and unconditional trust are melting. The deployment of German and European troops to Greenland signals a new balance in the alliance, steps toward an autonomous European defense, not a war cry but a statement of position. However, this crisis ends, the dynamics in NATO may never be the same again. Trust was questioned, once another weakness. From now on, every country reevaluates the future of the alliance. Dear listeners, what do you think? Will this tension be resolved at the diplomatic table, or will harsher winds blow across the Greenlandic ice fields? And how should other powerful NATO members like Turkey, Italy, Spain, and Poland position themselves in this process? The hatred continues to simmer, Trump driven by greed. Risks a break that strengthens Russia and China. Rumors of Russian spies in Europe. Chinese investments in Arctic mines worth billions. The Kvanefjeld mine with rare earth reserves worth trillions could ignite wars. China, controlling 90%, is laughing up its sleeve while Trump drives Europe into Beijing's arms. The GUK Gap. This strategic bottleneck where submarines with nuclear weapons lurk becomes a battlefield of mistrust, a rift paralyzing NATO. Macron uniting Europe against Trump, who divides a duel of titans reminiscent of the Cold War, but now within the West. The Bundeswehr, with Euro drones and CV-90 tanks, stands ready to fight against the ally, a scandal shocking the world. Dear listeners, do you believe Trump is bluffing or is a real war imminent?